Hey everyone, today we have a twin birth story, and we also have an amazing hiccup with technology. Because as we were starting to record, Ashley's computer kept flipping out and she had a 10-second delay, and it was so gross that I wasn't going to let her be on the video. So she's popping in now after she's listened to it. And what are you going to talk about at the end? We're going to do some commentary at the end after the actual birth story.
Yes, I didn't feel like it was fair to be completely left out of it because I was a part of this couple's journey and I was present at the birth, and I know how pregnant minds work, and I feel like I can add some additional memories and thoughts and feelings about the whole process to it that I was really looking forward to sort of sharing with them. But I'm excited that I got a chance to listen to it, and now I can share my perspectives and feelings and memories with all of you in our commentary after the episode.
And here we go. Welcome to the Birth Education Center podcast, hosted by myself, Care Messer, an entrepreneur, birth educator, and doula. My team and I want to help you discover your options in birth and postpartum, how to find your voice, and how to use that voice to navigate our maternal healthcare system. You and your baby are not just a number. This information includes doulas too. Now let's get started. We want to welcome Kelly and Kevin to the show today. They are second, third time, fourth time parents. I don't even know how to describe it like that. They came through our classes in 2020 and had a home birth. And Kevin had on his first birth a hospital birth. And I remember him talking about it in class, feeling unempowered, uninspired, and just plain old pissed at the whole experience. And so on their second baby, Kelly's first, they had a home birth. And today we're going to talk about their third and fourth births because they had twins at home in a state that really doesn't support that with midwives and home birthing. So it's a super sexy story. I'm really excited they're here today. Ashley was their doula, and Ashley's internet is not working well today, so she's going to pop in with her little commentary afterwards. But right now, welcome, you guys.
Hi.
Thank you.
The twins are sleeping, so we're going to see how this works, or they're playing together nicely in their bedroom. When did you kind of wrap your head around the fact or even figure out that home birth for twins is not exactly legal with home birth midwives here in the state of California?
Very early on, because as soon as we found out that I was pregnant, we wanted to go with the same midwife that we had used for James's birth, and we contacted her right away.
Yep.
And said that we would love to hire her again, but we told her that we were expecting twins, and she gave us the unfortunate news.
And I bet the pit dropped in your stomach because you went, not a hospital. What do we do? Because you guys did not want to do that.
Yeah, I was a bit heartbroken. So I know that the hospital has a place for birth. I know that. But something in my gut told me that even though we were going to have twins, it wouldn't be necessary. If it had to come to that, we were okay with that and we accepted that. But to assume that something was going to go wrong and we had to be in the hospital in the first place, that didn't sit well with me.
I think she kind of brought up the concept of free birth, and I don't know how serious she was, but just maybe out of a little bit about exasperation. We could just do this. We saw it the first time, and I mean, there are always concerns about the way the twins sit, and I thought I was pretty educated after James was born because we took the classes and did a lot of research, but it was like, oh, we got two, so.
Twins is a whole other level. Placentas, placement, gestation, are they, growing the right way? Yeah, there's a lot with 2 or 3 babies. So when you started the preparation for this one, I know you were listening to podcasts. I know you contacted Ashley, who has 3 babies, who is a doula, who is an educator, all of that. I kind of look at it as you guys have a thing where if there's a will, there's a way, and you figure it out, which is what you did. So how did you figure out that there were OBs that delivered out of the hospital in California?
I believe we figured that out once we contacted Ashley. She kind of opened the door for us to alternative things that we could do. And she also referred us to a OB through UCSD, one that she had interactions with and felt confident in. So she kind of gave us different options that maybe we didn't know existed before. So an OB at UCSD that does truly support multiple births and informed consent and all of that. But also, if we didn't want to go that way, here's this OB in California that does support at-home birth for twins
And has been doing it for a while.
for a very long time.
So we're kind of fortunate that there's maybe a handful of OBs, or at the time there was a handful of OBs that supported a home birth, multiples or breech, and he just happened to be within 2 hours of where we were at. She was an OB out of Redlands, the San Bernardino, California area. So with only a handful of options in the country for this type of support, Southern California is nice that there are a couple that are available if that's the route that you want to take.
And you also got to hire your first home birth midwife as the second opinion or extra support that's closer, as well as this other OB who is going to be birthing with you at home, which I think is fantastic because you still got the birth team that was very comfortable for you.
Yes, it was something that I don't necessarily want to say we had to push for it to happen. Our midwife was more than willing to be there. However, legally, her hands were tied. And that's a position to be in when you want to support a family, but you're told that you can't. However, she was able to support us because we insisted that the OB have assistance and support because one person is not enough.
Especially if there's three, right? If two babies and a mom need somebody, we've got more hands on.
Yeah, so we learned some things along the way. We're very fortunate. So, I mean, just for clarification, the OBs, they contract, the two OBs that we talk to that do home births, they have a midwife there that they work with. Or they will get a midwife that's local that comes. So it's not just the OB shows up and it's go time. They have a team
That we are unfamiliar with.
Yeah, that we were getting some references to some local midwives that they typically work with that we heard were really good. But we just reached out to our midwife and said, hey, we don't know if you do this, but would you consider it? And she's awesome. And I think for her it was, yeah, absolutely, I will support you, because if someone's listening to this and they've never had a midwife experience, like, it is a family member. I mean, not all midwives are created equal, but I think in a lot of cases you're meeting somebody there with you, and it's like you've made a new friend and a new family member. So, I was not shocked for her to say, yeah, I will absolutely do it, and I'll just make it work.
And then you had a pretty healthy pregnancy up to a certain point. Can you tell me about that? Because Ashley was talking to me a lot about, what do we do with Kelly? There's stuff going on. And we were really racking our brains to figure things out. And then once she saw you, that shifted everything. So can you tell me a little bit about that part of the pregnancy?
So in the beginning, I was very sick, very nauseous, and then things improved. And then they declined, and I couldn't breathe very well. I was having a really hard time catching my breath.
How many weeks gestation was this?
Remember,
It was towards the end of I'd say the second trimester. So she had very bad sickness. It was not unexpected because she was very sick with James. And then our expectation was that, double the twins, double the hormones. And so I think it was worse, but we had more skills to manage it. But then I'd say, yeah, towards the end of the second trimester, she just really started to, I think is when the growth spurt really hit. And so it was difficult for us because we thought, or I thought, that maybe it was just like she's losing space because they're growing. She's got that extra weight. It's harder for her to get around. But
yeah, my breathing it was very difficult to breathe, and my heart was racing all the time. No matter what I was doing, I could just be sitting and my heart was racing. And it really just felt like I couldn't breathe. It was a suffocating feeling.
I remember you said you feel panicked.
Oh, yeah. It was a vicious cycle because I felt like I couldn't catch my breath, and then that would cause me to panic a bit, and then I couldn't breathe even more. And it was just a cycle. And it was a bit of a hopeless feeling because I was told that, I was pregnant with twins, and that's what happens. You run out of space and you kind of can't breathe as well, and you can't move as well. And that's just what happens. And that was a pretty hopeless answer to get. And then we saw Ashley, and she came over for a visit, and she saw me and said that I looked pale. And I told her my symptoms, and she just, without even skipping a beat, she said, I think you're anemic. You should get some lab work done.
Yeah. Yeah. And so I think that for us, you mentioned that we're kind of connected to Ashley. For us, having a doula that was a multiple mom herself was an invaluable kind of resource, because it wasn't just that she had dealt with a lot of twins. I know she's kind of unofficially known as the multiple whisperer, the twin whisperer, right? Because families with multiples will reach out to her for her services. But I think it's, beyond that, her knowing it wasn't just like, oh, multiple moms are anemic. She shared with us, I had that problem. I know exactly how you feel. And I think for Callie, that's very reassuring. Number one, I'm not crazy. And number two, you're telling me this because you know what I've been through. So that was really, really great for us.
And it's amazing that I look at everything as a synchronicity when you're brushed off, because those things do happen when you have twins and triplets, right? You do lose space. You're very tired. There's all those things, the hormones, like everything you mentioned. And sometimes we're not looking at it from a perspective of there could be something wrong, because they don't know your coloring like we do, right? Because we've seen you in the good times and the regular times and the in-between times. And they missed that. And Ashley was like, she's transparent. Like, this is really bad. And your memory was even starting to go. Like, there were big complications with this that were not normal. And what happened when you got your blood work done?
I immediately received a call from the OB that we contracted with, and she said, you need to go in for an iron infusion immediately.
Yeah, she was very concerned at first. She was like, I'm worried about this. I forgot what it was, but there was some kind of result of the panel that Kelly took that she was like, I don't really like this level. So she went from like, oh, this is just normal to like, I'm very concerned. But then she kind of came back and was like, oh, I guess that level actually is normal. It's not too concerning. But so she wasn't initially a lot concerned, but then she was less concerned, and she had no problem scheduling the transfusions.
Yeah, so I got 3 iron infusions over the course of maybe a month, and it was like night and day. I could breathe, and my heart wasn't racing.
Yeah, I mean, one of the things that came for me of great value out of the hypnobirthing class that we took was this revelation that, I know I've said that a couple of times, your physicians work for you, and you really need to advocate for it. And as a partner, as the non-birthing parent, my belief is that the advocation is even more important, because there's times throughout the pregnancy and the birth that mom is very just down mentally, emotionally, they're tired, physically, they're sick. And so it's up to somebody on that team, whether it's your partner, your parent, your doula, your midwife, you may need to pick up that charge and really advocate and say, well, no, this is not how we feel, or this is not how we want, and not to get bullied.
Well, and when there is a no, we have to remember it's a system. So how are we going to make the system work for us? We are paying into it. So what are the other options? Because there are always other options, even though the no's are going to be prevalent, because people give up. And you guys didn't give up. That's why you had the birth that you wanted. So can we talk about the birth story? I want to hear about your babies. Were they both head down? Like, how did this labor start?
About a week prior to them actually being born, I started to have some what I thought were contractions. And then I started to feel a little bit sick. There was that one night we called our whole birth team over, and I ended up getting sick. I was throwing up a lot, and we thought that things were going to start moving. I think we ended up just having food poisoning. So things just kind of stopped for about another week or so.
Yep.
And then there was one day our OB came over just for a visit and to check in. Yep. And she was there in the morning. Everything looked fine. I was kind of getting to the end of my limit with being pregnant with twins.
You were at 39 weeks?
Yeah.
Yep.
Yep.
Both babies were head down?
Yep. Both head down. And I was ready. I was more than ready. And I asked if there was anything that I could do to speed up the process or get things moving. And she had a couple of suggestions, but she said that she had.
Well, no, she left. And then she called
Oh,
on
that's
her way
right.
home saying, hey, those things I recommended, maybe please don't do that because I have another mom that just went into labor. And so if you can wait.
Yeah. So I figured, okay, I'll wait maybe another day or so before starting these things. And I think that was at about 2 p.m.
Afternoon. Yep.
Yeah, about 2. And then, you know, I kind of came to terms with, okay, I'm not going to push it. I'm not going to do anything to start this process. And so I kind of was just going about my day. And then at about 4, I went to use the bathroom and my water broke.
Oh my gosh. Isn't that how it works? Don't do anything because I have another mom in labor and then labor starts.
And it was a bit crazy to me to experience that because with my first pregnancy with James, my water broke in the middle of the night, but it was such a small amount that I thought I was just peeing myself. And I didn't really think it was my water breaking, but then I realized it was. But with the twins, it was wild. It was very different. So I knew this is it. And so the calls started happening.
Yeah, so I was determined to get the pool going, right? Kelly lived in the pool for James's birth and loved it. They tried to get her out. They did for a little bit. It was not for her. And I was repeatedly reassured that second-time moms rarely get into the pool. So I think because we had the false labor, whatever you want to call it, I had the pool kind of inflated and ready to go. And that was like my goal, was to get that sucker going. So I started the water when I reached out to Ashley. And we expected a shorter birth because second time mom. And
Did you reach out to the OB first to tell her?
I probably
She
did,
said,
yeah.
She said that it didn't sound like
yeah,
real labor.
she was like, yeah, you're good. It doesn't sound like I'm too concerned.
Yeah.
Just let me know.
I'll get there when I get there.
Yeah, I'll
pretty
call,
much.
give me an update in an hour or so. And so, yeah. And then I called Ashley. And she's like, well, I'm coming over because it sounds like you're ready to go. Call the midwife. So I'd say Ashley and the midwife were both a little over an hour away. The OB, she was like 2.5, depending on what traffic looks like. I mean, it was like 4 o'clock. So this is what we expected. It was going to be a little crazier. So Kelly was pretty good, although I knew that it was going to go faster because she got into the what I like to call the moo cow stage a lot quicker. And it took her about 3 or 4 hours to get there with the first birth, and I had the water going, and I think you were in the pool before anybody really showed up.
I
You got
remember
her.
Ashley arrived while I was on the couch.
Yeah.
Yeah. It was so fast. Things progressed so quickly. The contractions there was no break. It felt like there was no break at all. And I was a little upset because I was like, I was told that there would be
A break?
there would be a break in between. There was no other option but to get through.
Yeah.
So the pool was
Yeah.
a huge help once that was filled up and I got into it. I do recall when Ashley came in, I was nonverbal. I wasn't speaking or anything. And I was kind of, I don't know, my head was in like 2 different places. It's like I was kind of present, but I mostly wasn't. I could hear what was going on and what was being said, but I wasn't responding at all. I do recall Ashley setting things down pretty quickly, her bags and whatnot, and she started squeezing my hips together, and that really did help quite a bit. And then the pool was filled, and I got into it.
And when did your other midwife show up?
I'd say shortly after, maybe 20 or 30 minutes after Ashley got there, and then Kelly's mom arrived too. So I would say within 90 minutes, pretty much everybody was there on our team.
Except for the
OB.
OB that, we paid almost a down payment of a house too.
Yes. And then actually, so because our midwife is amazing and she knows things, even though the state of California says that she's not qualified to do these things, she actually had brought a friend, a colleague midwife as well, because as we have learned that generally it's 2 people for each person involved, 2 people for each baby,
Backup
2
support.
people for whereas our OB kind of was like, well, I do all the work and then the midwife assists. And then you have a doula, and dad and mom or partners are there to help. And so,
That was not part of our plan of how we wanted it to go.
but again, we assembled a team that we trusted. And that's not to say we didn't have trust in the OB, because she's an OB and she was there. She could do, but in general, it is the midwife that does the work. And for one of the things that we said, not necessarily of just our OB that we have, you're paying them for the crazy stuff that you hope you never have to have them reach in and spin a baby with their hand. You don't want that to happen. You don't want them to have to deal with a complication, but that's kind of why you're paying them more, because
It's like insurance.
yeah. And that's not to say that a midwife couldn't do that. It's just I think the training for it, only because I think that our state regulations don't allow for it. Could our midwife birth? Absolutely, she could have, if she had more exposure to it.
And we have to obey the laws and also assemble a team we feel comfortable with and protect our midwives, because we don't want them to operate outside of the law and then lose a midwife, because we need them. So I applaud your knowledge enough to assemble a good team to cover any backup hiccups that did come up and could come up, because you had a team in place as babies are arriving. So
Yeah, the last thing that I'll say, it's something we've talked about a lot that just doesn't make sense to us. From a legal perspective, Kelly could have free birthed.
With no medical background.
With nobody there, with no medical background there, would have been well within our rights in the state of California for us to have no trained professionals to free birth. However, if we have a midwife who has attended hundreds, if not thousands of births, if she's there, she cannot assist us. She has to tell us, go to the hospital. And I don't know what would have happened if it happened and the OB wasn't there, if she would even have been, like, from a legal perspective, if she would have had to leave because she's not allowed to do it, or does she just stand in the back and go, okay, you're doing okay, I can't give you any advice. It's logically, it's ridiculous that that's illegal. And personally, I think has to do with money.
of course it does. 100% it does. Yeah, they know what they're doing. They're phenomenal in vaginal births and what's normal and a little abnormal. They're great at that. But you're right, it's money. So tell me how the delivery went. You're in the tub.
Yep. So I was in the tub for a few hours.
Yeah, maybe 4 tops. And it
Yeah.
was what we wanted. Family
Yeah.
was there. James, our oldest son, was there. The pets were there.
Yeah.
It was a chill environment.
Yeah.
Kelly wasn't comfortable, but she goes to this kind of magical place. I would say she was a little bit more with it during this birth than she was with James, but I think she knew a little bit more what to expect, so she would talk with us a little bit more.
Yeah. And so our son was born. He came out no problem. I held him. His cord was attached for, I think, quite a while.
Yeah, it was, no more than 10 minutes. It was a short cord, so Kelly couldn't really get him up on her chest.
And I remember Ashley saying that his delivery took a little longer because he had his hand up.
He did.
Oh, that's right.
He was Supermaning it on the way out.
Yeah.
Because Ashley said, I
That's
remember
right.
her saying, I think I feel toes. And they're like, no.
That's right. I forgot about that.
That's right.
Yeah, little Superman. So he joined us and I held him for a while. And then after about 20 minutes, I honestly kind of forgot that I had another baby to deliver. And after about 20 minutes, contractions started again.
Mm-hmm.
And so,
So we cut the cord.
yeah, his
and
cord was cut and he went over to dad.
Mhm.
And then our daughter was born. One thing that I do remember vividly when I was holding our son was our midwife touched my belly to keep our daughter in position.
Yes, she held.
In my belly.
So she didn't flip.
So she wouldn't flip. And
Yeah.
I thought that was amazing.
Smart.
That I recall vividly. So our daughter was born about 20 minutes later, and she was completely covered in vernix.
Oh yeah, she was just looked like a ghost, like
Yeah.
white,
It was
white.
coming out of her ears.
Yeah, it was pretty crazy.
Yeah.
Kelly caught both of them
Yeah.
herself. That was cool. She was able to catch them both. And
Yeah.
that was something that I think was very
Yeah.
important for her to try.
Well, I remember with my first birth, I was losing steam, and I remember saying, I can't do this anymore. I need help. I need to go to the hospital. And then our midwife, she asked me to reach down, and I could feel his head. And that just gave me the energy that I needed to know that it was so close and I was almost done and he was almost with us. And so I remembered that. And so for our twins' birth, I did the same thing and I could feel them and where they were the whole time. And it helped a lot.
Was her pushing, like her descent, faster than him?
Yes, it was much faster. I recall maybe it was 15 minutes when the contractions really started, and then within 20. So within that extra 5 minutes, I think she was out
Yeah, I think too,
very quick.
because he came out with a hand. Everything was a little bit spongier, and the dilation was there. We had 0 measurements, which was Callie's preference, and there just wasn't really a need for it.
Yay for no vaginal checks. Please keep your hands out of my vagina.
Yeah. Yep.
Yeah, it didn't seem necessary at all. So,
Yeah, and that I think is one of the many benefits of a home birth, which is that it's such a kind of like relaxed, chill environment, and the people that you engage, I think, respect the birth plan much more than in the hospital, where the hospitals are the new restaurants that you want to just turn it over more, and there was no need for it. There was really no need to check anything because Kelly knew, no, we're good.
And your babies were great sizes. Tell me what he and she weighed.
if I recall correctly, our son was 7'12",
Yeah.
I think. And our daughter was 7'2".
Fantastic. Born at 39 weeks. Was it 39 weeks on the dot?
I
Almost.
think it was a little over.
Maybe 39 and 2 or something, but
Yeah.
it was.
It was wild.
Yeah, I mean, I remember really wanting to get to 37 weeks so that we were not having an issue with not being able to do a home birth, but also not being too worried after that, because it was less about going too long from a gestation perspective, but more like the babies would be too big for Kelly to get them out.
Yeah. I don't know. I think it would have worked either way.
She's like, that's squishy. They'd slide out. And what about immediate postpartum? How did that go?
So I was helped out of the pool, and I don't know if it was the speed in which I got up or just the shift in my body, but all of my blood just seemed to
Drop. Yeah, so
Kinda
she was
drop.
still holding our daughter June in her hands. And I was on the couch, and I could see both of the midwives were helping her up to step out of the tub, and she just kind of folded down real fast.
Yeah. So I could feel it happening. I was going to lose consciousness, or I was going down. That's all I knew. So things went black, and I kind of just went to the ground. Luckily, like Kevin said, the midwives were able to kind of guide me to the ground so I didn't fall completely. I was still holding our daughter.
I mean, that's a lot for your body. You just have a baby in 2 babies in 4.5 hours. You've been previously anemic. It's a lot. And then you stand up out of a 0 gravity situation, right? It does drop I remember even getting out of the pool when I was in labor, drops all of your blood to the bottom of your body as you're trying to get out.
Yeah.
And Kelly had hemorrhaging, not like concerning amount, but it was something we had with her first birth, was After about 20 minutes, the midwife was like, the water's a little darker than I'm comfortable with, so we're going to get you out. So I think it's something that thankfully we were ready for. And so that was kind of the same thing that happened.
But once I opened my eyes again, I realized I had a circle of the midwives around me, just like my team, just right there talking to me, and they're going through their bags, they're getting what they need to get. And then I recall our midwife talking to me, and I was trying to respond back, but I think I was just saying the same thing over and over again. And then what really kind of snapped me out of it was I got a shot of Pitocin in my leg, and that woke me up. Yeah, thank God our midwives were there.
I mean, they're there to manage blood loss. Like, they know what they're doing.
Yeah.
It wasn't maybe 5 seconds, to be honest.
And to me, it felt like minutes.
Yeah, it was so fast. They got her down. They hoisted her up onto the couch, and they did the Pitocin used for what it's supposed to be used for.
Yep. Stop that blood.
And
And then
got an IV.
I got an IV.
Cut the cord for the baby for June, and then I got to do double dad pose, which was awesome. And we got some really good pictures, so I highly recommend a birth photographer if you're comfortable with it, because there's some great pictures of me holding both of the babies with James kind of looking on and Kelly's mom. So it was just like a generational kind of family. It's a really good picture, and just being there, but also being able to see what was happening. Kelly got an IV going. Yeah, a little nerve-wracking, but I had faith in the team that things were well in hand, and Kelly kind of revived, and she wasn't feeling super great, but she just had 2 babies. So I think that given the circumstances, she's a rock star.
When we've got a whole team, it's just phenomenal. It's just phenomenal.
I will say that, yeah. So our OB was present for the entire birth, but it was the midwives that did the work, which is fine because that's honestly what we wanted. And thank God that our midwife brought more help. So she brought her friend to come in because she knew that multiple births required more people. And then she had her midwife assistant in training. The midwife in training we had for our first birth, she is now a midwife. She had become a practicing midwife. And then the second one, was in training, and they both were also both spectacular, and glad that they were there, and very, very helpful. It's just an awesome experience.
They were great.
The whole point of any birth, whether it's home, hospital, free birth, is that you feel safe. And you guys really constructed a team that made you feel safe with the tips and turns and no breaks and contractions and a little bit of bleeding after and all of that. That's what makes a good birth experience, is knowing the risks and the benefits and building out from there.
And for me, like planning, right? So we are very firm advocates of the home birth process. We are not a fan of the standard medical system, but we're not ignorant to think that everything's going to be great. So if you're constructing a birth plan, and I probably talk about it more than most dads do because I just love it. And so sometimes when I talk to moms or potential moms, they're like, "Oh my God, that's awesome!" Like I'm the dude that will share my wife's birth story with them. Like, but you have your plan. The primary plan is the home birth, and then what are we going to do if we do have to transfer? Well, okay, this is what we want to do with the transfer. Okay, we want to go in and we don't want to have any interventions. Well, then what happens if we need an intervention? Well, then okay, this is what we're going to do in this intervention, and then ultimately down to what we don't want, which is some sort of surgical intervention, a C-section or induced labor. That's not what Kelly wanted, and I didn't want that for her. But we're not putting our head in the sand and saying, well, that's just not going to happen. It's okay. These are the criteria that we feel like we need to be met before we get to this. Because at the end of the day, from my perspective, it's all about the safety of her and the babies.
Education is what allows you to make those decisions confidently.
Absolutely.
That's right. And I think that having trust in the team that we assembled, it also opened the door for them to expand outwards and us to also be okay with that. So we worked with our midwife and we did trust in her. And so whoever she did bring as assistants, we inherently trusted because You know, our midwife, like Kevin said, is a part of our family. And if she feels that that was a good decision to bring more assistance, then we were okay with that. And we trusted in her. And the team that she brought with her was just awesome.
Yeah.
And they became advocates as well, because there were things postpartum that I was not comfortable with. And they became advocates, and they helped get my wants out there as well and known to the rest of the team.
So great. So what advice would you give parents of multiples that are thinking, I don't know how this birth is going to go and what do I do? Because the advice everybody's given is, well, we'll either induce or depending on where babies are, you're going to be having a C-section. It's like the first thing out of everybody's mouth to plan and prepare for this beautiful, what can be a beautiful pregnancy and birth.
Question everything.
Yeah.
Question everything. If you choose to go through an OB and they're telling you that you have a 50% chance of being induced or getting a C-section or whatever they tell you, ask them what exactly the percentage is. Because if it's actually a 50% chance, that's one thing. But if they mean it's a 50% increase, and it goes from 1 to 1.5% chance, is it worth following that advice?
Yeah, I mean, I think that if you assemble the right team, doulas are invaluable. They're not crazy expensive, right? Ashley was a little bit more, but it's multiple birth and finding the right fit. If you're going to have so midwives tend to be a little bit more expensive, but you can have a midwife in the hospital if you want to do a hospital or a birth center birth. Like there's nothing that says you can't have them or both of them. But connecting with someone that you trust that can help you understand what's true and not true, up for debate. Like Kelly said, question everything, and it's your doula and your midwife. If you're not a research-oriented person, that'll be like, well, what they're saying is this. So I'm a data guy, I'm a research guy, and I understand numbers and statistics, and I know how easy it is to kind of spin things to try to get you to do what they want. Familiarize yourself with the cascade of interventions and what that actually means, because that is a 100% a thing. Listen to podcasts and hear birth stories, especially if you're multiples. Like those are so great, to hear stories like ours. And ours, what I would say other than afterwards, was a pretty great birth story. Pretty easy, pretty straightforward, but they don't always go that way. So just listening to people who have gone through very difficult birth stories, but have, come through and things are fine, it helped me feel a little bit better. Like twin number 2 was breech and we had to deal with that. And you think of a breech birth and you're like terrified, but really, no, it's just, they get them. That's fine. There's just misinformation out there.
One thing that I really want to stress too is if you are in a hospital system with an OB, you can do what you guys did and hire an outside separate party as a second opinion. You could hire a midwife, a home birth midwife, as research information, as holistic things to do for nutrition, stuff like that, along with your medical journey. That co-care can really reassure you and know that you're not missing any steps.
Yeah, one thing that I will say about that is, in our experience, there have been some OBs that don't support co-care. So if they know that you are receiving information from an outside source, they will not support that.
Yeah.
There were a couple that were very straightforward with us about that, and they pretty much wanted all of our information to come from them. And if we were doing any research of our own, they could not support that. So if that tells you anything about the doctor that you're seeing, you might want to get a new doctor.
We learned a lot of lessons with a singleton birth, right? That helped us moving into the multips. If you are looking at OBs, ask around your birth community if they know of OBs that are supportive of co-care, that are truly supportive of co-care, because some will say that they are and they're not. And then also, if you go into it and maybe you find an OB that you are comfortable with, you say, hey, we were considering co-care, kind of feel them out. I'm not saying that you have to outright lie to them, but I think we said we had a home birth for our first birth. And the OB was like, oh, that's interesting. And we didn't get a super warm fuzzy about it. So we just didn't tell him that we were going to do a home birth with the twins. And in fact, he was really good. He was on his ready to retire. So I don't think he even contacted us after the due date of the baby because we never came in to give birth.
Wow.
Like they needed to reach out like, hey, what's going on?
Maybe they think Kelly's still pregnant a year and a half later. You know?
Maybe.
That elephant gestational period is going now. But so, I mean, for us, we made it what we wanted it, which was access to some of the testing and the ultrasounds and stuff. But thinking back on it, we were a little, even with our twins, we were a little uneducated about costs, right? So things were very expensive, but we ended up asking our midwife towards the end, like, your midwife can order tests for you. And we just assumed that it was going to be prohibitively expensive because, you know, labs are expensive. And I think we got one test that was like, oh, that's like $60. I'm like, $60? We should have you do all of
Yeah, it's really changed how we handle our own health and our kids' health care. And of course, we take them to the doctor if they need to. We're not ignorant to the fact that healthcare is important, but there are alternative ways of handling that. And so we're shifting our way of doing that, and it's refreshing.
Well, and it's asking questions and getting information instead of doing standardized care, individualized care. Why would I do this? What are the benefits? What are the risks? It's just getting more informed so that you can make a better decision for your family. That's all it is. And if that is bucking the system, I'm sorry, I'm responsible for my family. I have to live with the consequences of every decision. I'm going to ask more questions. And finding providers that do respect that is possible. You know, we have to look and see who our like-minded people are going to in order to find that. But I think this episode is really good for looking for alternatives, doing your research, being confident in your intuition and your gut when it's telling you something, and not giving up when you hear your first or second no. We have so many systems that need to be tweaked, but our medical care system is number one. Yeah.
it is captive.
It absolutely is. Well, you guys, thank you so much for coming and sharing your story today. I can't wait to hear Ashley's commentary because I know she had so many things to say about all of this, and she was so grateful to be a part of your birth and witness the beautiful birth of those babies. So anyway, thank you so much for coming, and we'll talk to you guys soon.
All right,
Thank
take
you.
care.
And we're back with our commentary with Ashley, who was the doula for that birth. And Ashley does have different memories and more details. And she did get permission from Kelly to share. So let's get started with that. Okay, Ash, take it away.
Yeah, I mean, I really loved listening to that. It's funny because it feels like it was yesterday and a decade ago at the same time. I can't believe those babies are a year and a half at this point. And they're a really special family to me because obviously I really love working with multiple families, but their journey was just one of the most perseverance and just felt like one hurdle after another being thrown at them. And I am amazed at their tenacity, at their absolute will to have the birth that they believed that they deserved, that their children deserved. And it's just so inspiring to me. And it's such a lesson to me that we really can find workarounds. We can overcome so much to achieve the birth that we want. And they will always be an example that I really hold up to families of finding a way to make it happen, finding a way to make the birth that you deserve and that you believe your baby deserves happen. And I loved hearing what they remembered and what they didn't remember, which is just my favorite. And then there were things that they remembered that I forgot. So it was really cool to listen back to it.
I am just excited that there's another birth story for twins that was different than what we are traditionally told right from the beginning. As soon as you say you have multiples in that belly is, okay, well, let's plan the C-section out, or when we get closer, we'll pick a date, or we always induce or something. There's never a shot of, let's see how things go and let's keep these babies healthy. Let's keep you healthy and enjoy the pregnancy. Because it's such a high risk in everybody's minds, they go straight for worst case scenario. And a lot of times it doesn't have to be filled with that much worry. You can really have a good, solid twin and triplet pregnancy, yes, there's going to be hiccups and things that everyone's checking on, but you can really bake them in joy and calm instead of always looking for what's wrong. And I think that's what these guys knew they wanted, and they went for it.
I feel like they always had a really beautifully balanced perspective of, while they are like very staunchly on the side of their believing in what was right for them and their freedom as a family to pursue the birth that they wanted, they do use modern medicine and understand modern medicine is really important. And they reached out and utilized it when they needed to. They saw right from the beginning that, yes, a twin pregnancy is different. It does rub me the wrong way a little bit when I hear birth workers say, oh, it's just one more baby. It's a variation of normal. Yes, it is. But there's such a variety of multiple pregnancies. There are so many different ways that things can go on. And in their case with a baby boy, a baby girl, two different genders and their type of twins, they essentially had 2 pregnancies going on simultaneously. And Kelly's body was dealing with that. And that does make it so much more different from a single pregnancy. So I really love that they had that healthy perspective. I don't want to call it fear, but like a healthy respect for how the intensity had ratcheted up for them and recognizing like, no, free birth probably isn't the right choice for us, given what we know about our previous birth experience, and even trusting the process as much as we do. We want help. We deserve help. We deserve to have a team support us. And I just love that, because free birth isn't for everybody and a fully medicalized hospital birth is not for everybody. And you're so right. We need to find a balance with these sort of outside the box pregnancies where we can recognize that there is room for both medical intervention and even just the watchful eye of medicine with higher risk pregnancies, while still respecting that bodies do know how to birth babies and that we know how to give birth. And we need to give space for people to be able to still pursue the birth that they want. And statistically, we know, and over and over again, they affirm this, that vaginal birth is just as safe for twins as C-section is. And in many cases, they consider a vaginal birth to be safer for twins than a C-section would be. And if we're going up into higher order multiples, a vaginal birth is just as safe as a cesarean birth for most sets of triplets if the first baby's head down. So the sort of rules and regulations surrounding our bodies have not really recognized what the evidence has found, which is that there should be options available to people who are having more than one baby, is really what it comes down to. So I really love that they wouldn't take no for an answer. And they were like, we need experts. We need people in our corner. We deserve to have people in our corner who know what they're talking about and can support us. And I'm so glad they reached out to me as early as they did. I still remember getting that email from Kelly being like, I am barely pregnant, but I'm having 2 babies and I don't know what to do because I had a home birth. And I knew them because they had spoken to our hypnobirthing classes, our hypnobirthing students, about their birth experience. I had met them, but I was really getting to know them for the first time. And I could see that sort of like fear of, I don't know what's going to happen, right? I don't know how this is going to go. I feel like the birth that I wanted is slipping away from me. And man, do I relate to that feeling of that thinking your birth is going to go one way and then it all just feels like it's getting ripped away from you. You do too, Gary. You went through your own version of that. And I know many people listening out there do. They can recognize that feeling of, this is what I hoped for. And right now I feel hopeless because it feels like nothing's going to go right. And I know that Kelly faced that a few times in her pregnancy, that sort of hopeless feeling of there's just no answer, there's no help, there's no whatever, but she never gave up and she never let the hopelessness win. And for that reason, she is just so inspiring to me as a client and a friend. And again, somebody that I will always talk about how powerful she is when I tell other families.
Well, and I'm excited to hear the details and what you remember and stuff like that.
Yeah. So I when I was listening back to it, it's so cute how just our mind protects us, I guess. And just, it makes us forget so many details about birth because Kelly was just like, oh, this and this, and this was so easy and that was so easy. And I was like, it was fast, but man, did those babies make you work for it. And it was quick. And I think that's one part when they're sharing the story and they're talking about how their provider was like, oh, it doesn't sound like you're in that much labor. Nothing will drive me crazier as a doula as how providers, nurses, doctors, and even midwives will sort of shrug off a second time birther as, oh, you're not in that much labor. Because Kara and I share the opinion that second babies, and in this case, second and third babies, are not to be trusted. And every car baby, side of the road baby, anywhere a baby's born they're not supposed to be, it's a second baby. That it just is a second baby. And so I knew when Kevin called me and said that Kelly's water broke, it was game on. Like he said in the episode, I was like, I'm on my way. And I could tell that he was a little bit like, really? Because the doctor had just told them it's not that big of a deal. And I was like, no, I'm on my way. And one thing that Kelly didn't remember that I laughed, and I expected her to say it when I was listening to it, and then she didn't. And I was like, oh, she doesn't remember. When I walked in, she was not yet sitting on the couch. She was walking out of the bathroom, and I was like, hey, how are you? And she's like, I cannot stop pooping. And I literally looked at Kevin, and I was like, you called the team, right? The doctor and the midwife, they know, because we need medical providers here. Because doulas, birth workers know that the can't get off the toilet, that continuous need to go to the bathroom, it means a baby is pushing down on your bowels, and that those babies were barreling towards the exit. And I knew it wasn't going to be long. And luckily, the midwife did get there pretty shortly after me. I think Kevin said it was about 30 minutes, and that's what I remember too. So a medical provider was there very quickly before the other provider arrived. And of course, like you said, the midwife also brought backup support. So we ended up, I think ultimately there were 3 midwives and the doctor that were all on this team supporting these babies. So there were a lot of people watching her back. So if any part of you is, I don't know, twins and home birth, this was a very, 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 very well supported home birth. Lots of medicine, lots of medical tools available, and very little of it even needed to intervene with the birth at all. I was so relieved when the midwife walked through the door because I was like, I know these babies are on their way. I could hear her sounds changing. The moo cow was changing to more of like a grunty piggy sound as that baby was moving down, and I just knew like we were getting closer. Which leads me to the next part that Kelly didn't remember, and Kara brought it up in the episode, but pushing the first baby out for her was fairly quick. I would say it wasn't too long, but the entire time she was telling us how hard it was. It didn't feel good. It didn't feel right. As Kara mentioned in the episode, she said, oh, it feels like there might be toes. I don't know what that is. Why does this feel so weird? Why is this so hard? Because baby boy was coming down with his fist by his face, and those little knuckles felt like a foot. And so it's just not like a straightforward push when the baby has a hand or an arm by their face. And so it was just making it uncomfortable for her. And I remember her literally saying, like, why is this so hard? I don't like this. I don't know if I can do this. That was the only point in her labor where she ever said, I don't know if I can do this, because of that little hand. Just, it doesn't make for a smooth exit. And so that's part that I think back on of, yeah, he really made you work for it. Because then when the little baby girl came, it was like a slip and slide, and it really was beautiful. Kelly, when they said in the episode she caught both babies, she fully delivered both of her babies herself. Like, I know that the midwife was keeping a watchful eye with a mirror, but Kelly was hands on the heads, hands on the shoulders, hands on the bodies, bringing the babies up to the chest herself. It was so much more than a catch. She literally birthed her babies into her own hands and brought them to her chest herself, which was just, oh my God.
That
so
is
beautiful.
The coolest. You cannot repeat that. It's a once in a lifetime experience. And in the tub, which, Kevin, good job, man.
Yes. And that was one thing that we talked about a lot at the last couple of prenatals. I kept saying, maybe have it inflated. Is there a place you can keep it inflated and away from the toddler to like just have it inflated so we're not inflating and filling? Maybe we can fill. We can't inflate and fill. So yeah, he was really on it. I mean, and he was on it the whole time. He's such a supportive partner and really Kelly's biggest cheerleader, and really the one who will say she's not taking no for an answer, which I think if anybody could have that kind of support in their corner, we could do anything, right? And that was really beautiful. A really beautiful thing to witness, like on their journey.
The cool thing is Kelly has a very quiet communication style. She ponders things, and then she says, no, that's not going to work. And then Kevin says, yep, she said no. And then he takes over. But so she can be that steady, quiet communicator that she is and just look blankly at them, and then Kevin takes over the conversation. It's really a superpower that they have when they communicate.
And I will compliment him too as a partner in the labor process. He just has so much trust for the process and so much trust for the providers and the team. I think they even said that in there. We trusted our team so much that when they brought other people in, we trusted them too because of that, He sat back and let Kelly birth those babies without needing to be super on top of her or what's going on or what do you need. He just allowed it to happen and he took care of their son. And there's some really beautiful pictures of him holding their toddler, looking as she's doing skin to skin with John, baby A. And it's just so sweet. And yeah, those pictures are some of my favorite pictures that I've ever seen at a birth, let alone a birth I've been at. And I love that photographer so much. And she just captured so many beautiful moments in such a crazy, fast, hectic situation. I don't know how she got there so fast. That is another part that they didn't quite have right. I was not far away. I only lived about 15 minutes away from them at the time. So I got there really fast. But the photographer was over 45 minutes away. And yeah, the midwife was a little further away in San Diego, probably 45 minutes. So I was the closest. And that's why I was literally like, I'm on my way. I'm coming. When it came to the second baby, she really did just kind of slip out. But not only did Kelly kind of forget that she was having a second baby, she was a little bit, I will not deny it, a little annoyed when she realized, oh God. And I think a little gassed out, like it had been so fast, this labor. And usually when you have a fast labor, it's crazy. But then you have the baby and it's, relief, right? Not when there's a second baby in there that you have to push out. And so I remember the look on her face being like, really, I have to do this again? But thankfully, she was so much easier for her to push out than brother. He was a little bigger. That hand, everything made a really good space for that baby to come out and really make it possible for her to do that, like skin to skin with her and stuff. And it was a little hairy when we got her out and she lost consciousness. Not the first or last time I've had a mom get a little woozy, dizzy, pass out at a birth. I mean, I literally probably have lost count at this point, and most of them have been in the hospital. I do believe they even did some kind of like smelling salts with her to help kind of bring her back into her body, which I've seen used at hospitals a lot when moms lose consciousness. But sometimes if you even think about yourself, if you stand up too fast and that sort of head rush you get and your blood pressure drops, but then like you also just did this incredibly athletic endeavor and you lost blood, you just had two babies come out of you. There was a lot happening and we fully anticipated it. And that was the beautiful thing about this team and me as a part of it. We anticipated it. We were literally all holding her. Like there were 4 of us holding her and holding that baby on her chest. So she was never in danger at any point, and it was just so amazing. And then we got her comfy on the floor and we started feeding her honey. And then her toddler decided he also needed honey. So we were giving her spoonfuls of honey and him spoonfuls of honey to kind of get her back in her body and get her feeling better and all of that stuff. But the I can't stop pooping line is just one of my favorite things. And then just like, does it feel like there's toes in my vagina is another really funny part of it. But it was just really special. And that team, like literally just the right people there at the right time, was such a beautiful experience. But it never would have happened if this family had not said, no, we're not going to settle. We're not going to settle for a scheduled C-section. We're not going to settle for this hospital that has the highest C-section rate in San Diego. We're going to go for the hospital with the lowest C-section rate, with the providers that are supportive of vaginal delivery of multiples. And then we're going to set ourselves up to have a home birth with providers that know what they're doing, that have the medical expertise to do this. And it's going to be a great experience. And they're so right. I loved what he said about having backup plans. And you and I are, you'll never hear 2 bigger proselytizers about how important backup plans are. And there's such a great example of continuing to have faith in yourself, your body, your baby, your process, while still embracing safety nets and backup plans. I mean, it just was the perfect combination of all of those things. So I'm really grateful that at least I got to listen to it and then come back and share my perspectives on it, because it really was such a special thing to be a part of.
One of the things too, I think with every multiples family, you may want a home birth, you may want a free birth, and that may be all you want, a water birth, whatever. And if in your area there aren't doctors and medical providers and even midwives that can support that, it can be really disappointing because you had a vision of what you wanted. But it really comes down to what kind of birth do I want with my baby? Because if a hospital is your choice, then embrace it and find the right providers. Embrace it, find the right support, because you can have outside help. And it's right, just like they said, there are doctors that do not want outside help and they will not help you with that. They don't need to know. If you need backup and you need to feel more secure in that path that you've chosen or that path that you have to choose, it's your choice what makes you feel more comfortable. And I think it's sad that we can't have providers cheer on whatever makes the family feel more comfortable. But I think sometimes they look at it as confrontation and, oh, if you know better than me, then why am I helping you? And I get that too, because they do have a lot of years of experience and degrees. I get that. I want us to get to a place where we can embrace how we can make this great for the family and safest for the babies and safest for the mom, so that we can just have a good birth. Because if we're looking at the whole picture and we're really feeling individualized care with this family, it's such a better experience for everybody. So, obviously we're not going to give any medical advice on this, but please look for outside help if you need some other support, whether it be with fears or whether it be with second opinions or articles, or there are people that can help you with that. And multiples, you're right. It's not just a second baby, Ashley. I've learned so much about multiples through Ashley over the years. And there's from placentas to postpartum care to everything. They're just different. And it doesn't mean it's more scary. It just means it's different. And you need to take more precautions than we used to in the old days before we knew everything.
Even if you're working within the medical system, I think that this is a great example of not being afraid to get a second opinion. She even recognized this provider that's on my insurance. No, I need a higher level of care than that. These are twins, and I'm not going to settle for just a regular schmegular OB, right? I need that next level of care. I recognize that for myself. And I think she really utilized all the providers she had at her disposal. It reminds me, though, of one other thing that I wanted to speak to, which is her anemia. And doulas are not trained in medicine, but once you have worked with enough people who are pregnant, you can start to recognize patterns in the ailments that people go through. And I think that anemia is something that people write off. So many people are like, quote unquote, mildly anemic, that we don't recognize like just how serious anemia could be, especially in pregnancy. And anemia, that lack of iron in our blood, means that we are not carrying the oxygen in our blood that we are supposed to, that is supposed to make the rest of our body function, right? Which is why we're short of breath. And then it can even lead to symptoms of psychosis because you're not getting enough oxygen to your brain, so that you are having that foggy memory, those sometimes even auditory hallucinations, visual hallucinations, loss of consciousness. And then in worst case scenario in pregnancy, if you are deficient in oxygen, then that blood that's going to your babies is also deficient in oxygen. So I really, really implore people that if something does not feel right, bring it to someone's attention, right? She got written off by all of her providers, which she wasn't with her midwife at the time, but both the home birth doctor and the hospital doctor were kind of like, that's twin pregnancy for you. When I saw her in person, I could see immediately that this is a person who is anemic, like clearly anemic. And I didn't say, I'm diagnosing you with anemia. I'm giving you medical advice. No, as a doula, I said, I want you to call your doctor and request that they run this test because I believe I am seeing symptoms of severe anemia in you. The initial response too was like, we think you might even need a blood transfusion right away, right? And luckily, they were able to just do iron infusions, and that was enough to get her feeling better. But some people do get so anemic that they need blood transfusions. And when it goes on so long and you're kind of ignoring the symptoms because you think that they're just pregnancy symptoms, you could really get yourself in trouble. So if you're pregnant and you're finding yourself short of breath, more than what we expect from having a baby on your diaphragm, if you look pale, especially if your fingernails are blanched, there's no like blood in your fingertips when you push on them that comes back pink when you push on them. If you're having brain fog, if you're having any type of hallucination, if you ever feel like you're going to pass out in pregnancy, call it to your doctor's attention. Ask for a blood test. check on your anemia and just know that iron deficiency is something that you can almost anticipate in pregnancy because your blood volume increases so much. And when you're a twin pregnancy, your blood volume, not only does it double, it triples because you're supporting 3 bodies. So I just wanted to circle back and touch on that because that really was a scary moment for all of us in the pregnancy when we realized this kind of big gaping hole in her care that was happening. But luckily, everything was remedied and we got her in good shape. And when it came to the birth, everybody really showed up exactly how they needed to support her. So,
Well, and what's interesting is I passed out 3 times in my pregnancy. Nobody caught the anemia. And I didn't feel good the last probably 2 months. And it wasn't until right before birth when they did a test, they were like, "Oh, you got to get your iron stores up. You got to do," and I didn't even make that connection until like 2 years later when I was teaching. And I was like, whoa, how did I have this great team and nobody caught that? I think we do. We blow it off the symptoms and it's not top of mind for correlation of, oh, well, you're passed out. You just must have overdone it. I'm like, yeah, because I can't assimilate iron right now. Plus I had the MFTHR gene, so that even made it worse. But
well, and not to mention, it's a caseload thing, right? It's like doctors and midwives have so many more patients at a time than I as a doula have clients, right? They probably have between a few dozen for a doctor practice to a few hundred and maybe 6 to 12 in a month, depending on the midwifery practice. But I only have 1 to 3 clients a month. I'm only seeing 3 people a month, basically, and talking to them. And I'm spending a long time with them. Most even midwifery appointments are an hour or less. Most doctor's appointments are 15 to 20 minutes. So it's really about that caseload and that time that I have with them, that time that I spent getting to know Kelly leading up to it, and then walking in and being like, this is a different person than was sitting in front of me last month. And I know that because of the amount of time I am able to spend with her. So it's just a reminder to doulas that like our intimate relationship with a family, the more time we spend with a family, it enables you to recognize when things may not be right. And again, you're not giving medical advice, but if you sense that something is wrong, you can be a voice for them and say, hey guys, we need to look closer at that. And then they can get that medical care. It's just important to remember that like doctors, especially, they're sometimes seeing 100 patients a day. So it's not even their fault necessarily that they're not getting enough time with you to not miss things like this that come up.
absolutely. Well, thank you for doing your commentary. Thank you for sticking with us. Technology defaults will not win over us. We will figure it out. And we'll see you guys next week.
Bye.
Thanks for joining us today. And remember, it's your body, your choice, and finding your voice is your power. Be sure to subscribe to our YouTube channel, follow us in all the places, and go to birtheducationcenter.com for our blog and more online education classes. And we'll see you next week.